Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to all the members of the party who have stepped up to be our electors to make it official in our filing with the state of Georgia. This is our heads up that the people are coming. We are coming not only to the Secretary of State's office today in order to file our intention, and our legal requirements are hereby in the process of being fulfilled. We are going on record. So heads up, business as usual. Heads up, politics as usual, because the people are coming. This will be the first time in the history of Georgia that I understand, at least in modern history and in recent memory, that a party has actually gotten access to the ballot, and more importantly, the first time that voters have actually had a choice to vote for candidates who are not part of a political system that is bought and paid for by Wall Street and the usual suspects. Because, yes, we have a revolt going on right now across America, in fact across the world if you haven't noticed. People are standing up in this country especially to say that we've had enough of a rigged economy, and we've had enough of a rigged political system that created that rigged economy and that prevents us from getting out of it. Because right now we have a situation where the jobs have come back partly, but these are part-time, temporary, low-wage, benefit-poor jobs that do not keep a person or a family out of poverty. In fact, average wages right now across the country are barely above the poverty level. We have an entire generation of young people who are locked into predatory student loan debt without the prospects for getting out of it. We have Black lives that are on the firing line from police violence, as well as violence that is hardwired into our economy, into our school system, into our education and higher education and our healthcare system. And I don't just mean physical violence, I mean economic violence. I mean the violence of not being able to get a place to live or to afford an apartment or to prevent your neighborhood from gentrifying. This is economic injustice, and this is racial injustice that go together, that we are standing up to say no more, not in our name. We are rejecting the political parties that have made injustice business as usual. We are rejecting that. We are also standing up for the millions of immigrants in the United States who are core to the productivity of our economies, who make our communities work, who are part of the diversity of our culture. We are standing up to say we're calling for a welcoming path to citizenship, and we're standing up to say the most important thing we can do to fix the immigration crisis is to stop causing it in the first place. We don't need no friggin' wall. We just have to stop invading other countries and turning millions of people into refugees. We need to call a halt to the war on drugs, which is a racist war on drugs, as well as a international crime that has killed over 100,000 people in the last 5 years alone in Mexico, and is part of the violence that is also creating the immigration crisis. There are so many solutions that we can bring to the table, because as Green Party candidates and as the Green Party, we are the one political party out there which has national stature, which is not poisoned by corporate money. We do not take money from the predatory banks, from the fossil fuel giants, from the war profiteers. We do not take money, in fact, from lobbyists for any for-profit organization. We do not take money from PACs or from super PACs. So we actually are what the American people have been clamoring for. A couple of the other solutions that we have the liberty to bring to the table is a full employment program, an emergency jobs program that we need right now. not tomorrow. We need jobs now. And that means good jobs, living wage jobs that build stronger communities and a healthier planet and protect the health of workers. And the really great thing is that in creating these emergency jobs, we can also solve the emergency problem of climate change. So we are calling for a Green New Deal, like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, but in this case it's a green one, so it also fixes the crisis of the climate, and by the way, it makes the wars for oil obsolete. So it's a win for jobs, it is a win for the climate, it is a win for international peace and security, and it is a win for our health. And it pays for itself simply by the reductions in expenditures for all the diseases that we are bringing on through fossil fuels. So when people say, oh, that's a great idea, but we couldn't afford it, actually, we can't afford not to do it. It pays for itself, and we get healthy at the same time. So this is the kind of thing that we are bringing to the table. These are the immediate emergencies of student debt, which, by the way, we are the only campaign that has promised, upon being elected, we will deliver. We will cancel student predatory loan debt in the same way that our electeds canceled it for the Wall Street crooks who crashed the economy. It's about time we did that for the young people who have been held hostage by that crashed economy. And how can we do this? It doesn't have to go through Congress. We can do this simply by the president's power of appointment over the Federal Reserve. So we can create that same mechanism, the quantitative easing, that was used to abolish the debt of the crooks on Wall Street. We can use that same strategy to abolish the debt of the young people whose future is held hostage. It's not only their future, it's all of our future, because the way forward is always led by the younger generation, whether it's the civil rights movement, whether it's the Black Lives Matter campaign, whether it's the campaign for living wages, whether it's the campaign to end sweatshops, whether it's the campaign for $15 and the right to a union. These are all campaigns, and the climate justice campaign. These are all led by young people whose job it is to foresee the future and to help take us there. So we will liberate that generation by canceling student debt, and in doing so, we actually liberate all of society to move forward into the future that we must have. We can also, as I mentioned, make these wars for oil obsolete, because we can generate all of the energy we need here at home. And part of this emergency jobs program, in fact, is to create 20 million jobs right now, which in fact will create that emergency transition. So we're calling for 100% clean, renewable energy, not 50 years from now, we're talking 15 years from now. By 2030, 100% renewables. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, at the outset of World War II, we declared an emergency. Well, we have an emergency right now that doesn't put one harbor at risk, it puts all harbors at risk, because we're looking, latest science tells us, we could be seeing 9 feet of sea level rise as soon as 2050. 9 feet of sea level rise means goodbye to all of our coastal cities. It also means goodbye to all of those nuclear power plants that are sitting at sea level that will go Fukushima. If we allow this to happen, it means hundreds of millions of global refugees. We can't handle the 65 million that are fleeing wars largely caused by US policies of regime change and military domination. We cannot deal with those 65 million unjust refugees, let alone 600 million refugees that would be created by 9 feet of sea level rise. So this is the time for us to stand up. And we're saying, forget that lesser evil propaganda. That's a propaganda campaign intended to deny you your power. Here's one of the secrets of your power. That student debt thing, there's no way out for that generation except for our campaign. Well, it turns out there are 43 million young people who are trapped in that student loan debt. 43 million is enough to win a three-way presidential race. So just by getting the word out to everyone you know who's holding student debt or who has a family member in student debt, let them know that we can come out on November 8th of 2016 and take over this election to cancel student debt, to make public higher education free, to create a jobs program, an emergency program that assures everyone they will have a good job as part of this emergency transition to a green energy, a healthy food system, and a system of public transportation, which is also essential for our communities. We can provide that. We can create health care as a human right through a Medicare for all system, simply by stopping the waste and bureaucracy and red tape of our private health insurance system and moving those dollars into true health care. We can ensure that everyone is covered and that the costs are more fairly distributed without increasing at all. They will be more fairly distributed so that the richest at the top, who are getting the most out of this system, are paying their fair share, and those who are not getting the most out of this system are paying proportionately less. And we can, at the same time, end police violence and ensure that communities are controlling their police, not the other way around. We can ensure that there are police review boards so that communities have the right to hold police accountable. We can ensure that there are full-time investigators so that all cases of death and serious injury at the hands of police are investigated as a matter of routine and that do not require a miracle from the Department of Justice in order to find out what happened and hold perpetrators accountable. And finally, we can create a foreign policy based on international law and human rights, not on total economic and military domination, because it's not working, folks. The response to terrorism is not more bombs and bullets that only creates greater cycles of terrorism. We've already pulled out all the stops. We've already tried that. $6 trillion since 9/11, basically on Afghanistan and Iraq alone. $6 trillion, according to a recent Harvard study, when you account for all of the medical expenses as well that are baked into the injuries of our wounded soldiers. $6 trillion, you know how much that amounts to for your household, for everyone here today and for everyone listening? That is $75,000 your household is paying for the honor of conducting these wars, which have not made us safer. What in fact have they delivered? Well, tens of thousands of Americans have been wounded or killed, and we have 1 million people killed in in Iraq alone, which is not winning us the hearts and minds of the Middle East. What else have this $6 trillion gotten us? Well, it's gotten us failed states, one after the other, between Iraq, Libya, Syria, Somalia for that matter, and so on, one after the other. These states are failing when we go in there with this blunt and destructive militarism. We are not fixing the problem. We are not becoming more secure, we're becoming less secure. So we actually not only get failed states, we get worse terrorist threats. And at each step along the way, the terrorist threat has gotten worse. This was actually said earlier this week by none other than John Brennan himself, the head of the National Security Association, who said, in fact, gee, it's not working so well because, in fact, ISIS is more of a threat than Al-Qaeda. Well, and it turns out Al-Qaeda is more of a threat than the Taliban was, and is more of a threat than the Mujahideen was. And who created all of these? Basically, you know, I hate to inform you if you don't know, but this was created as formal policy by the CIA and by Saudi Arabia, initially in order to create this concept of a global religious extremist movement, which they created, founded on the Saudi religious movement, and then basically used that to try to fight in Afghanistan, to fight the Soviet Union. So this has been kind of a poisoned pill from the very start that has only created one succession after the other of more terrorism. We cannot simultaneously fight terrorism while at the same time we and our allies are funding terrorism, are arming terrorism, and are training terrorism. So, yes. We are calling for a new offensive in the Middle East called a peace offensive. And that peace offensive begins with an arms embargo to the Middle East, because the only one benefiting here, as the Middle East goes up in flames and these wars come back to, with consequences and blow back all over the world, the only one benefiting is the war profiteers who are making hay out of selling weapons to everyone. So it's time to stop having a foreign policy that basically provides a marketing strategy for the weapons industry. So we call for a weapons embargo to the Middle East. We also call for a real effective border across Turkey's borders, so that Turkey managed to shut down the flow of immigrants under pressure from a variety of countries. Turkey agreed to close its border to immigrants. So how about we get Turkey to close its border to the flow of terrorist militias? That would be the thing to do. The other thing we need to do is to stop the flow of money, because since 9/11, the U.S. has been saying to Saudi Arabia and others that it's time to stop funding terrorist groups. Hillary Clinton herself admitted in a State Department memo that was not happening, and that the Saudis are still the major funder of Sunni jihad around the world. And that is terrorism, extremist terrorism around the world. So it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is, and to say that we will put our allies on notice that if they continue funding terrorist groups and their allied forces, that we will begin to freeze the bank accounts of those countries that are continuing to fund this disaster, because we cannot fund it and fight it at the same time. So we need a peace offensive, which is the effective way to do this. And finally, I'll just say, the name of the game here is all about standing up with the courage of our convictions in order to claim the promise of democracy and the peaceful, just, green future that is within our reach. This mythology of the lesser evil is exactly that. It is a propaganda myth designed to take your power away from you. In the words of Alice Walker, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Remember, we've got 43 million people in debt with no other place to go. Just by getting the word out through the real media, that is the free media, the media that's here today, we can actually get that word out. And thank you to the media, the real media, that's here to help do that. So the politics of fear tells you you've got to vote against what you're afraid of instead of for what you believe. But in fact, what's the track record there? Because a bunch of people have been doing that for a while now. And where's it gotten us? That politics of fear has delivered everything we were afraid of. All the reasons we were told you had to vote for the lesser evil, because you didn't want the expanding wars, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate, you didn't want the offshoring of our jobs, the attack on immigrants, expansion of the prison state. All those things we didn't want is exactly what we've gotten. Because if we allow ourselves to be silenced, then you know who fills that space. If we create that moral vacuum, the corporate predators and their political parties will fill it. So this is about our standing up and providing the values and the voices that make up democracy. Without our voices, there is no democracy. We need to provide that moral compass so that we can move forward to the future we deserve. When we stand up together, we are unstoppable. We say no to the lesser evil. Forget the lesser evil. It's time to stand up and fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it. Because they do. We can have an America and a world that works for all of us. The power to create that world is not just in our hopes, it's not just in our dreams. Right here and now, it's in our hands. Let's make it so, and let's get Georgia on the ballot. Everybody out with clipboards If you don't have a clipboard and a petition yet, contact Bruce Dixon or Dawn Gibson, and the phone number is 404-797-2087. Do I have that right, Bruce? That's 404-797-2087. Join us. Together we are unstoppable. We will take back the promise of democracy here in Georgia. Thank you.